Welcome to the SImple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. I'm your host, Shannon Ables, and whether you're listening on your commute, exercising, working in the garden, or sitting down with a hot cup of tea or a café au lait, thank you for tuning in. Let's get started. Welcome to the SImple Sophisticate. Hopefully you had a wonderful weekend and you are now in the middle of, or it's not the middle, I should say, we are beginning March. I can't even believe it. But that also means that we are a couple weeks away from a change of seasons, which is even more crazy to consider. The year has flown by. 2015 is already at 2 months down. And you may remember at the beginning of the year, one of the things I talked about in the blog and here on this podcast was this idea of getting back to simple in every avenue of our lives, every arena of our lives. And so today we're going to talk about money, or more generally, true wealth. Because when we think about what wealth really is, yes, it does involve money, but it also involves a handful of other things. We're going to talk about that today, exactly what is the definition of true wealth. And a lot of what true wealth involves is conscious decision-making every single day, how we spend our lives, yes, where we spend our money, but also what we do with our time, with our attention, with our thoughts. All those decisions add up to building either a very wealthy life, which by no means requires a six-figure income, or a life of poverty. And that doesn't even mean that you are living someplace that would be considered at poverty level. It's just a matter of incorporating all the necessary ingredients and really paying attention to them. That is what's going to determine someone's true wealth. So let's get started. I'm going to start with a quote by Sonia Roman and Dwayne Packer. It says, quote, "View money and things not as something you create to fill a lack, but as tools to help you more fully express yourself and realize your potential." At the heart of what the simply luxurious life is being able to tap into your true potential, to live a life of true fulfillment. And we can never forget that a small part, but an essential part of building a simply luxurious life is creating a foundation of financial security, of a sound financial life. The Nobel Prize-winning author and philosopher Albert Camus once said about money and happiness, "It's a kind of spiritual snobbery that makes people think they can be happy without money," end quote. And yes, I'll agree, his acerbic tone is a bit chilling, but in our modern world, unless we choose to live an alternative lifestyle, a certain amount of money is necessary to thrive rather than just survive. Now, should money be our driving force in life, something we should worship? Absolutely not. What money should be, however, in our lives is something that we understand regarding its role that it plays in the life that we are trying to create for ourselves on this path to contentment. Once we understand its role, then we must become masters of it rather than allowing it to master us. So we cannot ignore the necessity it plays in our lives. Otherwise, we allow it to get in our own way, and that's our own fault. So if we master it, we are removing an obstacle that shouldn't be there in the first place. That's a good thing. So today, we're going to take a closer look at everyday decisions that may initially appear small, along with once or twice in a lifetime decisions that, when navigated properly, actually can yield a very strong financial foundation. Here's a quote to ponder by Seneca. "Wealth is the slave of a wise man, the master of a fool." Okay, so let's master it. Let's become the master of money. Let's become the master of how to figure out how to be truly wealthy. That's what we're going to talk about today. Keep in mind, there is not a set amount of money that will make each of us wealthy. In fact, many of our ideas that are going to be shared today are actually going to be non-monetary ideas. For example, one of the quickest ways to boost our gratitude is to do a quick inventory of all the abundance in our lives. Eckhart Tolle once reminded us, acknowledging the good that you already have in your life is the foundation for all abundance. So rather than dwelling on what we lack, when we flip that on its head and focus what we are already experiencing that's going well, the abundance in our lives, our relationships, a roof over our head, whatever it is, food in the fridge. When we focus on the good, our mind changes, our attitude changes, we realize how truly rich we already are. So what exactly is true wealth? Well, here's my definition. True wealth is a combination of contentment, a sense of purpose, strong, healthy relationships, and a bank account that is enabling us to tend to each of these effectively. So with that definition in mind, let's take a look at the 13 ways we can each cultivate true wealth in our everyday lives. Number 1, spend less. Pretty simple concept, but let's dive into it. First, let me share this quote from Edmund Burke. Quote, "If we command our wealth, we shall be rich and free. If our wealth commands us, we are poor indeed." Okay, so there are 3 basic principles that financial advisors often give their clients. Number 1, spend less. Number 2, make more. And 3, invest wisely. Each one of us will set a different number that is required to live within our means as well as be comfortable, right? But the key is to know where our money is going and to assess as honestly as possible whether our money is being spent wisely or whether it's being wasted. Only we can know that. Only you can know that about your budget. Only I can know that about mine based on what we just talked about, what we need to live and also what we need to be comfortable. And often our budgets are going to change as to what is a necessity and what isn't, based on how our personal growth is going, based on our goals, based on our values, based on as our life changes and shifts and our priorities change and shift as well. But it's important to make sure that we are not spending unnecessarily. So if we can eliminate those unnecessary spending habits, we can save ourselves a lot of money in the long run. So that's number 1, spend less. Number 2, reconsider the ideal neighborhood. So recently in a Forbes article online that I was reading, it reported that in order to acquire true wealth, we must not aspire to live in the best or most expensive neighborhoods. Yes, it may seem like initially a good investment. If we can afford it, why wouldn't you want to live in the best neighborhood in town? But if we're simply living there to feel as part of a certain culture, to identify with a certain group of people, for appearance's sake, in other words, that we actually are depriving our future financial security of money that we could use to invest in the now that will help us in the future. So no, you're not going to want to go buy a house or rent an apartment or rent a house in a shabby neighborhood that is unsafe. Absolutely not. We're talking about finding that middle ground where your house is still going to accrue value, appreciate, but at the same time, it's not going to drain everything that you bring in every month unnecessarily. So rent or buy in a place that allows you to still invest, but also allows you peace of mind. That's number 2. Reconsider living in that ideal prime neighborhood. Number 3, forget new and choose used. Now, we're talking transportation here. If you indeed have to have transportation and you have to have your own car to go to and from work or to live your life, it's best to invest in a used vehicle rather than a new. And we probably heard this many, many times before. The reason is, again, similar to the living in an ideal neighborhood. We don't need to spend that extra money, that extra $100 or $200 or $300 a month, when we could take that money, if we have a used car, that extra money that's not being spent on a huge car payment, and put it into savings, put it into an investment, whatever it is. Any place where we can trim the budget and still have what we need, transportation, a safe home, do it. That money is going to save and build and make a strong financial future for you so that you can go off and retire or travel or invest in more, whatever it is that you want to do with your life in the future. It will allow you to do that. So that's number 3. Forget new and choose used. Number 4 is to practice patience. So we're talking about investing here. And when it comes to investing, the best advice is always to invest early. But none of us has a time machine. So if we can't go back and invest when we were younger, maybe we didn't do it. Hopefully we did. Even if it was just a little, hopefully you did. Because that little is going to turn into a lot quicker than if you start now or when you're older, depending on how old you are at the moment. So the key is patience. Start investing today or continue investing if you already are, and forget about it. Forget about it. Set it up on automatic deposits every month and forget about it and let compound interest work its magic. If you don't think that that money is yours, then you're not going to be fretting about not having it in your bank account. Set it up and forget about it. Have patience. That patience, as long as you're doing the legwork of depositing regularly, will pay off. Number 4, practice patience. Number 5, set aside any extra money. So if you receive a tax refund this year, or maybe you receive a bonus throughout the year at the end of the year, or maybe you receive an unexpected commission, set aside this extra money in your savings, your mutual fund, wherever you have investments, and that it's not readily at your disposal. If you do this each time a nice windfall comes your way, you will establish one of the most comforting nest eggs for a long list of opportunities down the road. It's something that maybe initially will be hard to do. I mean, seeing a huge check coming in that you didn't expect is a wonderful, comforting financial feeling. But what's even more comforting is knowing it's there untouched for maybe an emergency down the road that you didn't expect. And hopefully that doesn't happen and it begins to accrue interest and you're able to go put a down payment on a house, or you're able to invest in that education fund that you had your eye on for either your future or someone else's. Whatever it is, having that extra money is a huge way to sleep well at night and dream for the future, knowing that those dreams can become a reality. Number 5, set aside extra money. Number 6, avoid trend investing. I have learned this the hard way. Thankfully, not a lot of money was lost, but still I have personally learned this one the hard way. You may have invested in Facebook or Twitter a few years ago when they finally started selling publicly, hoping that they would be the next Apple or Google or any of those one-hit wonders that have skyrocketed since they debuted years ago, only to be disappointed. Don't fall prey to the hype. While you will want to invest in high-risk stocks when you're younger, because you have that ability to do that. I mean, you will be able to respond when the stocks do drop, as they will. We're in a capitalist society, but you're also going to be there when it rebounds as well. So do take risks, but don't just buy this one particular stock. It's trending, it's popular, people are talking about it. Don't do it. For the most part, it's not going to be worth it. There are always anomalies. But unless you really know how to play the market or your financial advisor is savvy with regards to that particular trend, even then be careful. I say don't do it. And many other financial advisors say that as well. Number 6, avoid trend investing. Number 7, don't overestimate appearance. So here on the SImple Sophisticate and on the blog, The Simply Luxurious Life, we do discuss style and fashion a lot. I mean, Fashion Week is still going on. We're moving to Paris right now and following all those trends that are running down the runway. Fun, love it. But it's not necessary to buy a ton of items with big labels simply to impress others. That is why we talk about the capsule wardrobe here on the blog and on this podcast. Invest in 10 to 15 capsule wardrobe items of quality for the fall season and then for the spring season. Do this. Yes, you're buying quality items. You're probably going to invest in it, but don't be buying tons of clothes. Don't be buying items for their labels, purely for their labels, to show off what you're wearing. Buy them so that you feel confident. Buy them so that you command respect for that appropriate occasion. And then let go and let your intelligence, your know-how, your expertise seal the deal. That's the key difference. Appearances have their place, but don't give them more power and don't spend too much money on them simply because you think that's the only way to get something done or to be noticed. It's not. Not if you want to live a life of quality, of contentment, of being respected for what you know, what you can do, not just for what you look like. Number 7, don't overestimate appearance. All right, we've just talked about the first 7 ways to cultivate a life of true wealth. I'm going to take a quick 1-minute intermission and I will see you on the other side with the remaining 6. Welcome back. So let's dive right back in. We have 6 more ways to cultivate true wealth, and I want to get started. So number 8 is learn how to effectively communicate. What you're going to notice in these remaining 6 traits or 6 ways to cultivate true wealth is that they don't necessarily directly deal with money, but they do affect our wealth, our overall wealth, when we think about this definition of what true wealth is. So number 8 is learn how to effectively communicate. At first glance, communication may not seem like something you'd expect to see on this particular list with dealing with wealth. But when it comes to relationships, whether they're professional or personal, it is how we are able to effectively communicate that's going to land us that job, convey sincerity, express clear boundaries or love and aspiration so that we can achieve or at least do our best to achieve or gain or build what we seek or desire. Dale Carnegie's well-known book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, you may have heard about it, came out in the 1930s and it's continued to be a bestseller ever since. It is a worthwhile read, if nothing else, to learn tricks and tips on how to communicate in just about any situation you could ever imagine. Mainly it's focused on the professional part, but I would read it also just to learn how to communicate effectively with anyone in your personal life as well. Highly recommend it. There'll be a link on today's show notes if you want to check it out and see what it's all about. They've actually updated it in the 2014 version to include digital interactions as well, so I think it's a fantastic update for our modern world and all the media, social media we deal with on a daily basis. Number 9, so that was number 8, learning how to effectively communicate. Number 9 is to invest in health. In the recent book that I recommended last week on the thoughts from the editor called Food Rules, the author reminds us that it's better to pay the grocer now than the pharmacist or the doctor later. And while initially paying for quality food, as we know, can be expensive, it definitely should be something to consider and to do if you can, if you're able to, because it actually is not only an investment in your health, but your overall happiness, and coming back to money, it does have an effect, on your bottom line down the road when it comes to your health, your body's health. You're not going to need as much attention. You're not going to fall prey to various diseases and things, or be more susceptible to them, I should say. Everyone's body's different, obviously, but it's definitely a way of being preventative. Invest in your health. Number 9. Number 10. Learn the rules and/or laws and then break them as necessary. In order to attain wealth, we must have the knowledge of how the world works, whether we are talking about the world in general or the world in which we work, our everyday workplace, how it is that we can get a promotion, the rules and expectations, and what we need not do so we can keep our jobs. With any law or rule, though, it has been made by man or woman. And so it's going to be imperfect. It's ripe with imperfections. But it's our job to understand how these rules came to be, these laws or rules came to be, and if they are ineffective, to know how we can go about changing them or reforming them for the better. This takes time and attention, as you might imagine, but knowledge is power. So if you are left on the sidelines because you weren't aware of how the game was played, you have only yourself to blame. It's so important to educate ourselves as to how the rules and the laws exist and are governed for any entity that we deal with in our lives, whether personal or professional. We will be better off for it, and we will save ourselves an immense amount of headaches down the road. Number 10, learn the rules and laws and then break them as necessary. Number 11, choose to forever be a student. I want to share a quote with you from C. Joy Bell. She states, anything that you learn becomes your wealth, a wealth that cannot be taken away from you, whether you learn it in a building called school or in the school of life. To learn something new is a timeless pleasure and a valuable treasure. And not all things that you learn are taught to you, but many things that you learn you realize you have taught yourself. Choosing to forever be a learner of life, whether it's in a formal setting like a school or as you travel the journey you are currently on, is to become agile, nimble, and wise as to know when it is best to progress or hold firm. To know history, to understand current events, and to know yourself and how all of this is going to affect you and how you will respond is similar to number 10, giving yourself more knowledge, which is then thereby giving you more power. Now, we're not talking about power that you're going to use to control others, but rather power to charter the path that will help you unearth your true contentment. And that's what this is all about. Reach your full potential. Benjamin Franklin states, an investment in knowledge pays the best dividends. So while we're investing in our mutual funds and our 401ks, we need to invest in our knowledge bank as well. Don't forget that. Number 11, forever be a student. Number 12, discover what you love. To start us off, I'd like to share a quote from Herman Cain. He states, success is not the key to happiness. Happiness, rather, is the key to success. If you love what you are doing, you will be successful. If you are currently involved in a job you love, you may not making that much money, especially initially. And that often happens, and that's often what deters us from going into certain fields because we don't think we're making enough money. And understandably so. Absolutely. We have to make money to care for ourselves, take care of ourselves. However, if we continue to be diligent in our efforts, even if it's on the side as a second job while our other job is the one that's paying the bills, as long as we spend time becoming an expert on our craft, we will eventually create a niche, a talent, a gift that we can offer others like nobody else can. The key is to persevere and to forever be a student, learning something new in our desired field. For if we are happy and hours pass away like seconds, and we have something that others need or desire, we will find a career. We will create a career, maybe, if it's something that no one else has done, and we will then be successful. It is possible. It is possible. Number 12, discover what you love. And number 13, last but not least, make your own opportunity. Maxwell Maltz says, quote, what is opportunity and when does it knock? It never knocks. You can wait a whole lifetime listening, hoping, and you will hear no knocking. None at all. You are opportunity, and you must knock on the door leading to your destiny. Unfortunately, opportunity, it doesn't give us a calendar or a schedule of when it's going to arrive. Wouldn't that be nice? But when in actuality, I think not having a schedule, not having a calendar from opportunity is actually probably a blessing in disguise. After all, how would it distinguish those who are truly desirous of what it is that it has to offer between those people that are simply there because, this sounds good, to those fair-weathered kind of fans? No, opportunity is much wiser than that. It is something we must prepare for out of a sort of blind faith. It is something we must diligently work for in our desired field toward a goal that we may not even know how to define. And then, as the quote above suggests that we just talked about, We must begin knocking until a door finally opens, and keep knocking. As you can see, some of the ways to acquire wealth, true wealth, deal directly with monetary decisions, while others are indirectly responding to how we interact with life, how we take care of our health, and our willingness to take risks and to unearth our talents. Upon attaining true wealth, you will recognize that you have attained it because you will become less restless. You won't be counting your money or incessantly checking your bank accounts. Rather, you will be able to sit back, breathe deeply, and remain confident that you have done the proper preparation, are offering something of value, and have taken risks when necessary that are in alignment with your goals and values. So you see, true wealth is a state of mind, one that, while yes, does involve money to some degree, also requires of you, the journey woman, to be in tune with herself and conscious of how you live each and every day. If you would like to visit today's show notes to get any of those quotes we shared, any of those links to the books discussed, go to www.thesimplyluxuriouslife.com/podcast27, and you'll find everything that we've talked about in today's episode. Now, stay tuned for this week's petit plaisir, as it is something quite scrumptious and quite simple as well. I'll see you on the other side. All right, well, welcome back. So this week's petit plaisir is a dessert. It is Meyer lemon tarts. And as we are nearing spring here in the Northern Hemisphere, and my Aussie and New Zealand listeners are still in summer, I thought this would be a good transition recipe. It is delicious. And I wasn't planning on making this last weekend until I went to Portland 2 weekends ago. And I was in the grocery store and I saw Meyer lemons. And I pounced because we just don't have Meyer lemons where I live. And I knew I wanted to make this tart. I knew exactly the recipe that I wanted to use. And so I picked up my 6 Meyer lemons and I was just waiting. So this weekend I made not just, you can make one big tart out of this recipe, but I divided it up into 4 different mini tart pans. It actually makes more than enough. You could probably make 5 if you wanted to. It fills them up no problem. But I absolutely love this recipe, but I've honestly never made it with Meyer lemons. And so I was using Meyer lemons, and the difference in flavor is profound. These little guys, these are the little lemons. They are absolutely adorable. You don't want to really use them, but you just have to. Of course you want to use them, but you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, and their flavor is just potent. It's absolutely powerful and delicious. So this recipe is inspired by Darjeeli Dreams, the website. I used it a few years ago, but this is the first time though that I actually was able to use Meyer lemons, and it is worth your time. It doesn't take a lot of work. It just takes a bit of time. First thing you're going to want to do, and I'm not going to go through step by step the recipe right here. I'll provide a link on today's show notes to take you through it, very detailed, is that you want to start by making the crust. And tart crust is one of my favorite things to make. I use a food processor. It's so much easier. It doesn't take as much time. And the difference between pie crust, at least some people's version of pie crust versus tart crust, is I always add at least a couple tablespoons of sugar. I tend to put in a few more. I love a little sweet in my dough. And then, of course, you mix it all up and you stick it in the fridge. And while it's chilling, this is when you're making the lemon curd. And this is when those Meyer lemons get to work their magic. So simple. While you are finished with the curd, you place that in the fridge. And I highly recommend straining the curd so it's very smooth and luscious looking. So easy to do. Just get a fine strainer and swish it through with a spatula. Anyway, you put that in the fridge. And while that's chilling, you will bake the tart crust in the oven. And this is one item I don't have in my kitchen and I need it. I highly recommend getting pie weights or anything to weigh your tart crust down while you're making it so it holds its form. If you do not have pie weights, I have used beans. I've also used coffee beans as well. You just put parchment paper down and then you put the coffee beans to weight the crust down. Once the crust is done, per instructions that'll be on the show notes today, podcast 27, then you pour the curd in, and you only have to bake it for like 3 to 5 minutes, and it's done, and it's delicious. So highly recommend this little dessert. There's a picture on today's show notes too of how mine turned out just this last weekend, and it'll take you directly to the recipe from a previous blog post that I posted a while ago. But highly recommend it as we get ready for spring, just a few more weeks, and or savor the rest of our summer for my Aussie readers and New Zealand readers. All right. I hope you've enjoyed this week's Petit Plaisir, where each week ideas are shared to make the everyday all the more enjoyable. Tune in at the end of each Monday's podcast where I'll recommend a book, a film, a recipe, or from time to time, introduce you to an expert who offers insight into how to live simply luxuriously, anything that is a simple pleasure to satiate your sophisticated taste. Thank you for tuning in to the SImple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. For more ideas and inspiration throughout the week, stop by the blog, thesimplyluxuriouslife.com, or pick up the book, Choosing the Simply Luxurious Life, A Modern Woman's Guide. Until next Monday, I'm your host, Shannon Ables. Bonjour!